It's episode number 317 on the Church Solutions podcast, and my name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
And I'm Michael Gray.
Good to have Michael with us. You haven't been with us for a while on the podcast. How's everything going, Michael?
I've been just doing all kinds of things. So
Yeah, you have been. You definitely have been. All right. Well, it's good to have you with us, and it's good to have our viewers and our listeners here to our Church Solutions podcast. And I was just talking to Michael before we went on here. I can't believe we're almost into 2022. Wow.
Yeah, no kidding, man. It's like it was a lightning flash of a year, and here we are.
Here we are. I can't believe it's gone so fast. A lot of things happening in 2021, and we move into a new year here as we're in December. So today we thought that we would talk a little bit about, since the new year is coming up upon us, we thought we would talk about some goals that your church, your ministry should invest in. And we've got 5 written down here in my little notes here, but as usual, we're not always sticking to that. We might go off topic a little bit, but before we start talking about goals, I want to encourage you to check out mychurchdaily.com. The Church Solutions podcast is brought to you by mychurchdaily.com. What is mychurchdaily.com? Steve Lacy.
It is a way for your church to be on Alexa every day.
You can be on Alexa. Why would I want to be on Alexa, every day? Why would I want to do that?
So it's just another platform that your church can reach your community and reach your members through. So you put your daily devotions, your messages, news, upcoming events, whatever it may be, in a very personal way with your congregation.
All right.
It's really simple.
That's right. And it's really works off of what Alexa has, a feature called Flash Briefings. And as Steve said, your church could be a part of that, and your congregation could pull up Alexa, the Amazon Echo devices, and ask for the flash briefing, and your church can be right up there. So check it out, mychurchdaily.com. And full disclosure, it's brought to you by us. We're the guys that did it. So, all right. So guys, let's talk about 5 goals we should invest in as a ministry, as a church, for 2022. And I use the word invest in this because, sometimes you get these ideas that, goals are just a business thing. Ministry shouldn't have goals. Ministry shouldn't do those things.
Well, because in ministry, you should want to be really lousy at what you do.
Well, you want to be led by the Spirit, but I think.
Yeah, but there is a level of excellence there that should be actually higher than the business world. But anyway,
that's a good point.
Makes me laugh.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, and I believe the Spirit can lead us to planning. I think that planning things out and having goals, at least I like use the word intentions. Not that you can't change what your goals might be, but it would be good to look at something. I think goals are important because it helps your church, your leadership team, your volunteers. It helps them get on the same page with you, and keep your dogs barking during the rough times of the year. And so let's talk a little bit about that, about goals that we should consider. So I put a few things down here. I'll bounce these off you guys and see what you think, and we can always add some more. So the first thing I put down was that you really should invest in your digital communications for 2022. Thoughts on that, guys? Yes or no?
I think the world has changed in 2020 and into 2021. Everyone's attitudes have changed around how you do work, how you do shopping, how you do all that sort of thing. And going digital is what everyone has done. And if the church is not there, at least participating, if not leading the way in that, then then we got problems. So there was you had a stat from with the Unstuck Church that talked about just the growth in streaming last year. I don't have it handy. Do you have it handy?
I don't have it handy. That's Tony Morgan's deal, and he comes out with some very interesting stats that maybe we could talk about next week.
Good
So I don't
idea.
have it here in front of me, but I imagine it went way up as far
Yes,
as streaming.
the streaming went way up, and the small group participation was doing well as well. So
Yeah.
it's I mean it's the new thing in that people are just used to, oh, how do I work from home? Okay, I got to work from home. How do I go to church from home? So I want to do church from home sometimes, as an option. So definitely need to invest in that. Otherwise, you're going to
I,
get left behind. Go ahead, Mike.
well, and I think you alluded to, Phil, the fact that 2020 was an evolution of people embracing digital because they had to. Now, more and more people are more comfortable with it. So it's kind of where I'm always at this time of year. I'm beginning to say, okay, how do we take those tools? This is a whiteboard session, put them up on the wall and say, how can we take them to the next level? How can we make these tools that now people are okay with work in a way that still allows us to be authentic and relational and lead people where they're comfortable and how they're comfortable, but at the same time push the envelope of how do we make these tools serve us in a way that they never have before.
Yeah. I would challenge anyone out there to know somebody that didn't participate in a Zoom meeting or an online meeting this year. I mean, you're going to have a real hard time finding somebody that didn't participate, and compare that against 19 or 2019. The numbers have been dramatically different. So it's just become a part of our way of life here.
Yeah, I obviously agree with all of that, and the streaming video has been around for a long time now. I mean, we've been doing it, what, 12, 13 years, something like that, with our company streamingchurch.tv, but it's been around for a while. But yeah, we saw, obviously a huge spike in 2020, and there's lots of different opportunities out there and different options for people to do streaming video now. And it doesn't, I've gotten feedback from people like, well, it's not the same. Well, of course it's not the same as meeting in person, but it's a great option. It's a great tool, and it can add to, as Mike was saying, it can add to what you're trying to do to help people connect, and get them to the first step maybe of your church, and help them, and if you don't do, and Mike will say this right off the bat, if you don't follow up, and okay, you got somebody watching your live stream or your archive, if you don't have a way to connect with those people and help them get to the next step, then you're blowing it.
Yeah. It's definitely a good supplement. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that churches move all of their services online and go virtual. You definitely don't want to do that, but it's a good supplement, and it's a good on-ramp for new people.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. So that was my first thought, was invest in your digital communications, and not just streaming video here. We're talking your follow-up systems, your emails, your newsletters, invest in those things, get them to the next level. It's not just streaming video here. It's all sorts of different tools and social media. I mean, we've talked a lot about social media here, and I think a lot of people get fatigued hearing about it. But the truth is, social media is also here to stay. There's different platforms out there, and some of them, as Mike, you're kind of an expert on this. There are different ones come and go. But, you really do need to be on social media if you really want to hit on all 8 cylinders. Wouldn't you say that, Michael?
Absolutely. I think I've definitely run into some churches lately who have a strong dislike and distaste for some social platforms. I would probably agree. I have a strong distaste, but I'm not going to cut my leg off. I still need to walk to my guest. I still need to connect with them, and I have to bite my tongue and say, okay, I'm going to use this tool for now until I can find a tool where more people spend their time and I can connect directly with them in a relational way.
Yeah. Jesus went, and his apostles, disciples always went to where the people were. And they're on social media. And so as much as we don't like it, or may like it, whatever your preference is, that's where a lot of people are. And you need to be on there as a church, as a ministry. Your presence needs to be there.
Yeah. And in this time, I would say now is probably a really smart time to keep your eyes on the road ahead. I think in the next 5 years, there'll be some social media platforms that explode overnight, just because of the dislike for some of the current ones. And so where's the next place going to be where a lot of people spend time and you can engage with them and be relational with them?
Yeah, that's a good point. Good thinking. Okay, shall we move on to number 2, guys, in our little outline here? So talking about investing in your church, number 2, invest in your local community. Now I'm talking about the community at large outside your church, not your church community necessarily, but the people that live in your city, that live in your neighborhood, that live in your area. I still think part of the purpose of the church, all my years of being involved in ministry, is not just the church. The purpose is not just the church. The church is not just existing for themselves. We exist to reach other people and to help our community. And I would just say that if you're in a church and we're not doing something to help the community, again, I think we're missing the mark, because that's what, look at historic Christianity. It was always involved in helping people outside the church. And there's lots of opportunities to do that, especially during the pandemic here that we are still in. Lots of things you can do to help out. And I put this in the notes, but I want to caution that doesn't mean you start another ministry. Look at what you've already got, and hopefully you've got something out there that's reaching people, helping with the community food bank, or helping with the Gospel Rescue Mission or Salvation Army or something like that. Or other places that you can be involved in and put an emphasis in it, and invest in your local community, because that's what people will see. Words are cheap, but actions bring much more weight.
Yeah, and this is actually foundational to the other points that we're going to talk about. So if you're not in touch with the needs of those outside your church walls, and understand what's going on in the families and in the community outside of your church, you're gonna be kind of a holy country club, and you want to reach out and get to know the outside the walls, the people and the needs. And there's other opportunities I think you talked about in the notes here about there's other organizations that are not associated with the church that are fully dedicated to serving the people, your crisis pregnancy centers, your homeless shelters, your, whatever it may be. Those guys are pros at reaching those in need, and partnering up with some of those organizations will help everyone in the long run.
Absolutely. It's so important. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I think one of the things I look at when I think of this is, Jesus talked about salt, and you lose your saltiness when you're not involved in community. You also lose your relevance. If you don't know what's happening in your very own community, you're not going to be very relevant as a teacher, as an organization. You need to be with the people. You need to know who they are and what's happening in your community. And then, as you guys have said, partner with somebody who's doing something great. Don't recreate it. Partner with them and help them do it better, so that you can serve more people in the community.
Yeah, I get to drop in on this, kind of segues into the next one here, but we all get to drop in on a lot of services online, so we can kind of dart around the country and the world. And it really pains me to see some really sparse attendance in some of the churches. And I'm just thinking there is a community there that people need to hear this message, but they're not in the doors. And it's the church, for me, I'm thinking the church has become, that others on the street might say, well, that's not for me. That's not relevant to my life. And investing in your local community is going to bring those people through the doors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think when I first moved here to Tucson in 1979 permanently, I was on staff at a street ministry on 4th Avenue here in Tucson. And we connected with a lot of people, not just off the street, but people, different areas. And one of them was a group of basically hippies out south of town. And I would go there and lead Bible studies and stuff. And it was interesting to have some discussions with people that had a different way of thinking on things. And those people became part of a local church that I was also part of at the time. And it changed their life. It changed my life. And I see they're one of the couples that I met 40 some years ago they're up on the Northwest, but they come down here now every summer, or I'm sorry, every winter in the Tucson area. They have an RV, and I'm going to go out and have lunch with them one of these days again. And, this was a product of something that happened 42 years ago, actually more than that. And it changed their lives. It changed my life. And, it just brought, as Michael was saying, relevance to what we were trying to do as a church back then. So absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So invest in your community. Number 3, invest in your worship service attendance. Invest in your worship service attendance. So again, this is not about, let's see how many people we can get in the building, but it's about really helping people move forward. I mean, you want people in the facility if you can do that, but it's helping them. And again, this is probably in Mike's wheelhouse here. It's not just getting them to show up, but it's getting them to the next step and the next step. Yes. Right? Yeah. Right, Michael?
Yeah. So I often am very off-putting for people because I come from a marketing background. So I try to put it in terms that isn't quite so offensive, but think about it this way. Of every 10 people that you get to come to your church online experience, maybe 2 or 3 of them really love the way you do church. There's 1,000 different ways to do church and everybody thinks they're right. We're not going to get into that kind of arguing and games. What I do know, though, is people like certain styles. So that tells me that for every 10, I'm going to end up with maybe 3 people who really dig my senior pastor and the music and how we serve, and a connection point to where they'll stay around and come back. So I know I have to continue to fill that funnel, even if that language sounds uncomfortable. I have to fill that funnel with attenders to continue to find the 3 that really dig how we do church, and so that we can connect with them as individuals, one-on-one, as much as humanly possible, to try to get them to take a next step, because we desperately want them to succeed in what they're looking for. They're looking for something. They don't come to us to fail and fall off, but that's what will happen if we don't do our side of investing in making that experience great for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you're pointing to one of the things that was another stat that jumped out at me from the report from Tony Morgan, was you can't please everybody. So one of the stats that jumped out was those that are offering multiple styles of worship in a service, their attendance is going down. So as opposed to those that stick to a particular, those that offer traditional and contemporary are having a real hard time. And it may sound counterintuitive to, not address the broader audience, but that's kind of what the stats were showing. It's just kind of your point, Mike, is, kind of take on your own, you have your own style, and you've got to work through the people to get those that are going to want to stick around. So, I mean, the first part of that is reaching out to your community and become a part of it. We have people at our church that have probably been going for years that can't stand our worship style, but they have a relationship that, overcomes that lack of interest in how we worship. So, or they don't like the way we preach or whatever, but the fact that we invested in the community and formed some relationships, they're willing to overlook that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true. And when we talk about it, investing in your worship service attendance, that also includes, as Mike was saying, Mike's using the illustration of the sales funnel, which, might offend some people, but the principle is true. The principle is true. It's really true. But, we're talking about also your website. I mean, that's a part of your worship service, so to speak. I mean, it's part of the digital, but it's also part of, people getting in the door, seeing you. They're going to look at your website before they ever come visit you. And so your website needs to be set up in such a way where and we talked, Kenny Jong and I talked last week on the Church Solutions podcast here about, having a plan your visit feature on your website, or plan your visit option on your website, where people can, and we talked about that. If you didn't hear that, you can look at it on one of the past last week's Church Solutions podcast. But you want to have things on there that will attract people, help people to connect, give them opportunities to see what's going on, ask questions, answer those questions when they ask, and be a part of even equipping your volunteers, so when people do come into your services, walk in the door, you've got volunteers and leaders that are equipped to help people, help them find the bathrooms, find the children's areas, those kind of things, and help them with their walk.
You want to do all you can to create an excellent experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And so important. All right. So moving along here, as we're starting to run out of time here. So invest in your worship service attendance and all those things that kind of go along with that. The other one is invest in relationships, which, Steve, you were just kind of touching on there. It's not enough to have a good Sunday morning experience. I mean, that's really important. But, if you don't have relationships and opportunities for people to connect, Sunday mornings are great, but I have firsthand experience, with the church I was working with a while back, that, Sunday experience is pretty good, but nothing else was around. And so I had to really struggle to get them to realize, hey, we need to facilitate relationships here. And we can do that several different ways. One of them is small groups. Mm-hmm. And help people connect. And as you were saying, Steve, when people have connected, they can tolerate maybe not their favorite song Sunday mornings. They can tolerate things that they may not be real excited about, but when they have relationships, that helps them stay connected.
Right. And small groups is probably the primary route for that, or, even the specialized groups, men's groups, women's groups, moms groups, whatever it may be. The way to get the numbers down and get the assimilation levels, up, so that people can relate and foster those relationships.
We had a group, we used to play basketball. That was our small group when I used to go to, it wasn't called the Bridge back then, it was called the Cool Church, Tucson Community Church. And we started playing basketball Sunday afternoons. We could quite a group. And that was a small group, but we played basketball.
Yeah.
Back when I could play. Well, when I could move. Can't move very good.
Well, Steve and I are connected with a group of gearheads. I mean, guys that like cars of all kinds.
There you go.
And we're able to, some of those guys we have a relationship with now for 15 years because we connected on something beyond the weekend service that we had commonality in, and we became friends. And now we've been friends for years and years.
Yeah. I did something like that in Kansas with the church. There's a number of us, we did an off-road. We started an off-road club. It wasn't my church's off-road club, but we started an off-road club that was really geared towards family environments. And a lot of those people end up showing up at my church and became a part of my church back in Kansas. And we, like you were saying, Mike, we had a little different. We weren't exactly gearheads, but I guess we were, because we had to fix everything that we broke when we went wheeling.
It's part of the deal if you're off-roading.
They helped me a lot. So All right, good deal. So relationships, very important to invest in relationships in 2022. Take it to the next level. And now the next one I have is invest in new leaders. Now I'm saying that new leaders because I am real big on multiplying ministry and multiplying leaders. If you just have the same people on your board, if you have the same people on your leadership team year in and year out, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's usually not very positive. There's a group I'm working with right now informally that's like, they've lost their senior pastor. They've asked me for some advice. And one of the first things I said was, well, you want to get some new leaders. You want to get some people that really have a heart for the ministry. And then maybe you should resign after you get those people, let them kind of take the ship.
Yeah, I would encourage ministries to take a calculated risk with new leaders. And a lot of times that may be young leaders that might not have the maturity that they're going to need, down the road, but invest in them and provide some safety nets and some counsel but provide an avenue for them to, pursue the leadership roles so that you're not, so you're bringing new blood in, getting new perspectives, and you got to take a little bit of a risk because you may find that some are not suitable leaders and you need to make corrections as they go along, but be willing to invest in some of the newer people that you may not think or have it yet, but they will in a few years.
Yeah. New leaders bring in new ideas. May not always be what you want. And, obviously they need to understand the vision of your church. Hopefully you've got that mapped out well and your mission and all that. But new leaders can bring new energy, new vision, which could be good. Some new thoughts, some things that maybe you and I didn't think about in the past. And it's just a good thing. I mean, we added Mike to our team here with what we do when the pandemic hit. And Mike, you've contributed a lot to streamingchurch.tv and to our company because you brought in some ideas and some thoughts that we maybe didn't think about.
Fresh eyes and new leaders as well will bring, and you said this, but they'll be hungry. They want, they're excited, they're energetic, they're ready to actually put some physical labor or whatever it may take to make some changes happen. And sometimes those of us have been around for a while, we get a little stale and we're like, oh, pat them on the back. That's really good. But, we're too old to do that kind of work or do that kind of thing or whatever that may be.
You got to get out of the way sometimes. And there's nothing worse than to bring new people in and then not give them the freedom to make some mistakes even at times. But all right, good deal. Anything else to add to this, guys?
Lots, but I think we'll cover that in the next podcast.
Yeah, we can do that. Steve mentioned Tony Morgan's got a report he puts out, I think every quarter, but he does a yearly one too, which I just saw on the email here a couple of days ago. So we'll probably talk about that next week. Some of the interesting stats of what his team has put together. And 2022 can be a good year. Yeah, we're still dealing with pandemic. We're still dealing with some obstacles out there. But there's always going to be challenges, right? And so let's go forward. I encourage you to get your team together if your church, your ministry, and consider what's going to happen in 2022 if you haven't already, and be open to change. All right, guys. So again, this podcast is brought to you by mychurchdaily.com. Check it out and let us know if you have any questions. Steve and Michael and I and other people with this fine company, JSL Solutions, celebrating 20 years now of serving churches. And if we can help your church, your ministry in any way, we would be excited to do that any way we can, and not just technically. We've got some other areas of expertise that we could be more than happy to help you with. So, all right, guys. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Phil, Steve.
Glad to be here.
All right. And I'm Phil Thompson. And most of all, thank you for listening to the Church Solutions podcast or watching us. We've got that option as well. Please take care of yourselves. We'll catch you next time on another episode of the Church Solutions podcast.